Hello, my name is Eva Leventer, and I'm the acting DRE at Northwest Unitarian Universalist Church. And I've been working there for about 1 year. And prior to that, I had my son, whose name is Yona, in RE for about 3 years. And I volunteered in the YP committee, which stands for Youth Programs Committee. And I also really enjoyed working as an RE teacher. And today with me, I have a couple of friends who have worked in RE or also in education. And we're going to give you a little training, teacher training for the volunteers that are coming to our RE program at Northwest. So can I hand it to you, Julie?
Sure. So I'm Julie Bodson, and I am a mom of Colin, who's 11, and a stepmom to Jonas, who's 12, and a mom to Mag, who's 16, and who has been at the church since they were 4. So we've been there for 12 years. And I just recently finished as chair of the Youth Programs Committee for 5 years, and I had been on it for 10 years. And I think maybe even that same year that I started volunteering on the committee, I started teaching too. So I've taught in the pre-K. I've taught when we were divided by age, that is. I've taught in kindergarten through second or third grade. I've taught upper elementary. I've taught middle school kids all at NWUU. The one group I didn't get a chance to, but I was signed up to do it during COVID, was the high schoolers, the youth group. So I haven't had experience with that yet. There's always time. And I am a music therapist by education. So many years ago, I worked with kids in the schools and special ed programs. But it's been a long time since then.
I'm Madeline Partham. I am mother to Annika, and she is in the RE program right now. She's in third grade. In terms of what I've done at the church, I helped out with the Peace Camp this summer, and I'm interested in helping out as much as I can in religious ed. I am a teacher, so I teach first grade. I've been a first grade teacher for 8 years. Before that, I did ESL, which is English as a second language, and I also did some instructional specialist work, which was working with kids doing special interventions for math and reading. So yeah, that's kind of my experience, and I'm excited to be part of the group.
Thank you, Madeline and Julie. And we have one more participant who isn't here yet, named Trina Toko, so she'll be coming soon. I'd like to start with a chalice lighting, and it goes like this. Flame of fire, spark of the universe, that warmed our ancestral heart. Agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom. We strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. By Leslie Pohl. Okay, so we're going to get started. I have an agenda for this meeting, and I'm going to get started by talking about an orientation to the Sunday program. So I'd like to share with you what we're going to be doing every Sunday, and I have this in a document which I have shared with those people who are volunteering in the fall, and I will share that again if you need it. So basically, volunteers will be getting there around 10 or 10:15, check in with Jill or myself, staff, and we're setting up the Affinity Groups spaces and helping with the RE room, getting tables and chairs together. And then there's also snack that needs to be set up, and sometimes the person needs to check in with Jill to see if she needs help during the service with the young children. And then at 10:30 to 10:50 is the worship service, and children above the age of 5 or younger will come into the service and hear a story. And then they will leave with their teachers and proceed to the the multi-purpose room, and the children will play a game. And usually these are sort of community building games to kind of get some energy out. And the staff will bring the kids from the nursery into the multi-purpose room so that the little ones can play as well. And then at around 11, there'll be snack and sharing. And the snack and the sharing will be led by myself or an affinity group leader. And there will always be no nuts, and there'll be dairy-free and gluten-free options. And oftentimes we use the themes of the story, which is going to be around about the 8 principles, one of the 8 principles, or a day of observance, or a holiday, or something, a theme that has to do with what the service is about. Then we're going to join affinity groups, and those affinity groups will be led by one of you, we will sometimes have 2, sometimes have 1 group, and they will change once a month. The younger children can play in the nursery when they're done with their group, and we can take them outside. So at the end, we will have cleanup, pick up, and outdoor play. And the children are always itching to get outside. So I think unless it's really, really cold, that we will hopefully get them outside at some point. And I think that is all I have about parents might be enjoying coffee hours, so we let them do that and have pickup around 11:45 or 12. And now that we have coffee hour again, I think that parents will take advantage of that. And then if you can help RE staff clean up the room, sweep the floor, brush off the tables, that would be very helpful. Thank you. The next thing in our orientation is about the child protection policy that we have. And part of the packet that I have for all the volunteers is to read over the child protection policy and sign a form that says you read it. Really, it's just a skimming thing. It's not something you need to like read word for word, really, but it's good to know it. And the main points I want to say about the child protection policy is that we always have 2 people in the room with the kids, two adults, which means the age over 25 and up. And then if one of those adults has what they call it's called a primary volunteer, which means that they have filled out the paperwork to get the full background check. And the secondary volunteer, which can be the other person in the room, and I'll be concerned with this, I won't put this on you to figure out, just needs an iChat a background check. So it's not a full background check for everybody. And I'll let you know if I need you to do which one or the other according to your affinity group and who's going to be with you. I think the other thing about the child protection policy is that we'll have you fill out an application. That's just so we can get to know you and have some information about you on file. And we will be keeping everything very confidential. So it'll be locked up and your numbers won't be shared unless they're taken directly to I think it's called HMS. Do you guys know what the central clearance is taken to an agency, and I can't remember the name of it. And then there is some stuff in here about mandatory reporting, but you can let me know if there's a concern about child abuse. Yeah, I think if you read this, you'll kind of get a sense for that. I I don't have anything else to say about it right now. I didn't really study up on this document too carefully. But anyway, I read it. I think we can manage it, and hopefully you guys will have a chance to read it too. Okay, moving on. Julie is going to talk with us about children, how to manage children of different ages.
All right. And before our current model came into being, the only time when we had children of different ages together was during the summer. And we had a multi-age group the entire time, and we had different activities going on throughout the time. So this is coming from that experience. And I would say there's a little pre-thought that has to go into it. So if you are leading an affinity group, you have an activity or a lesson that you want to do, the best thing to do is just think about it a little ahead of time and break it down into steps. So ask yourself which steps are simpler and can be done by younger kids or those with certain abilities. If there are steps that are more complicated for the group, there are a few options. You can pair the younger kids with the older kids or an adult so they have the support they need. Or there's always the team approach. You can have one group that's responsible for one piece of the project and another group that's responsible for another. And then giving the older kids and the teens a leadership role or getting them involved in the preparation of the project is often effective. Not 100% of the time. Some days they don't want to be the helper, but it's always good to offer them the opportunity. So those were my initial thoughts. I don't know if any of you have anything to add to that.
One thing that I find really helpful as a teacher is being really explicit or clear about what the expectations are and what we're going to be doing for that day. So outlining so the kids kind of know what to expect, and that can help cut down on some of the management of different age children as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. In some of the classrooms, we had a blackboard and we used to write the agenda on the board for the day. We don't have that in the pre-K room, so maybe we could use a whiteboard or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. This is Trina. She's here with us now. And I just wanted to take a second to have you introduce yourself. Can you just say your name, your role in the roles in the church that you've played, and maybe a little bit about your experience with children?
Sure, yeah, I'm Trina, and I've been a member of the congregation, and I'm going to have some visitors, I suspect.
Uriah!
And so our family has been a member, close to, or I guess I've been a member for about 7 years, and my kids have been a member for about 6. And so I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old, I think. Yes, that's how old they are. And yeah, so I am actually one of the parents that very much appreciates the RE program because it gives me an hour, well, maybe like 35 minutes of peace a week. So I don't volunteer a ton, but certainly have had a lot of experience, especially with kids with trauma. So that's what brings me here today.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about getting children engaged. And Julie, do you want to lead that, or was Madeline going to lead that?
I'll let Madeline start, and I'll see what hasn't been addressed. And
sure.
Okay.
So I think getting kids engaged, that a lot of that depends on the age of the kids. Thankfully, the little ones, which are the ones I work with, are often pretty engaged and excited to be there. The big thing with the little ones is kind of keeping them on track and focused. But I think one thing that really helps is keeping the lesson or the topic kind of tight and short. So, maybe 10 minutes of a lesson and then breaking for activities. And again, being really clear about what you're sort of targeting. So if you're learning about, how to be a good friend or, things that you can do in your community, just staying on that topic. and getting the kids involved in conversation around that. The other thing that I've learned as a teacher is the less time I talk, the more engaged the kids are. So it's sometimes hard for us as adults, and I struggle with this as a teacher too, to sort of cut myself off. And I think the more you can pull kids into the conversation, the better. Movement is fantastic. So getting the kids up and moving is great. Singing, dancing, those kinds of things. And then always having something hands-on for the kids to do, I think really helps to keep the kids engaged. So I think the big things are keeping the time that you as a teacher are talking kind of to the minimum as much as possible, engaging kids in conversation for 10 minutes or so, and then having something that they can do where they're moving or making or doing something active will help with that engagement piece. Anything else, Julie?
Yeah, I'll tag on. So, in terms of movement, even something like putting one of the supplies across the room and asking someone to go get it who looks like they need some movement in that moment is a great idea. And I was thinking some of those same thoughts. I always talk, if I'm talking to the kids, then they're doing something. So, like reading a story during a craft, having a conversation during a science project, whatever it is, if there's action happening, they're more receptive. I've also I've had different responses to this from the grown-ups, but kicking off an activity with a real short video, like 2 to 4 minutes, is great, especially in a multi-age group. I've had like preschoolers and teenagers watching the same video, and it's just an intro, whatever the topic is. I'll find a video and introduce them that way. It just sucks them right in. All right. And as Madeline was saying, limiting our talking, allowing them to talk. They love sharing their related knowledge and experiences with the rest of the group. So if you can, I think that most people who are leading affinity groups will be listening in and chit-chatting during the sharing piece during snack time. So you'll start to learn about the kids and what motivates them. And if you can remember that and throw in a question while you're, doing hands-on activity, that's great. I've also found that giving them a challenge has been effective. So can we do it? Let's find out, whatever it might be. Okay, I don't know how coherent my notes are, but I know we'll be talking about neurodivergency in a minute. But I think it's important to remind yourselves that with kids of all ages, abilities, backgrounds, and interests, if no one ends up being interested in the activity itself, or if there's intermittent engagement and then kids are running around the room, that's okay. That's okay at NWUU because it's never a failure, truly. Almost all of our 8 UU principles have to do with relationships. If you look at them, it's all about the relationships between the kids, between the grown-ups and the kids, and sometimes even between the kids and their space, their environment. So no failure. What else? Oh, and sensory activities can attract and engage, especially the younger kids. Great for older kids too, but touch with various textures, smells, something visual, movement, to keep all that in mind as you're leading will help engage them. So relationship and the process versus the outcome. That's what we've got to keep in mind.
That's great, you guys. Wonderful. Now we're going to talk about neurodivergent children, and not specific children, but just some ways to approach this group of people that we have at our church and welcome them in. So I'm going to start us off. And I also made a little cheat sheet that I will get to you. Let me start by saying neurodivergent children are particular about their snacks and what they like sometimes. So sometimes we have to find something a little extra for them if we have it, and pay attention to what they want so that I can go buy it. Some neurodivergent children will not participate in games and snack and activities unless it's on their terms. And what we have sort of done to kind of help this along is offer them a play option, and also let them sort of peek in and see if they want to participate. And I know for a fact there's 3 kids in the program that this applies to. Some neurodivergent children react quickly to disapproving comments and children that provoke them. So they, react to name calling or little faces or whatever, and it could be a bigger reaction. It is best for you to get the DRE if you don't feel comfortable managing the problem, or Jill. If you would like to try and manage the problem, it's helpful to do some things that I'll talk about with the name calling and bullying and teasing section. And that mainly is reflective listening is one of the things that I'll be talking about. When there's an adult there dealing with the problem, it's best to sort of let one person take care of it at a time rather than a lot of help. Some neurodivergent children will experience a meltdown over something that seems like a small issue. And if you give them some space, that's really helpful. And you can offer a hug if they're seeming like they need that, or a hand. And also reflective listening is which I'll talk about, is important to help them recover, but at a distance. They need some space. Some neurodivergent children have a hard time expressing their feelings. So this is when you'll see a hard time for them to read faces sometimes and see compassion for other children. The important thing is to hear that they have hurt someone or hurt someone's feelings, and that can't continue, but that they feel heard and respected is really important. And that usually stops their action if they feel heard as well. And finally, some neurodivergent children struggle sharing, respecting, and noticing boundaries. So they are more likely to point fingers at others than take responsibility for their own actions. Not always, sometimes that's the case. And it's usually great if we try and see and hear their concerns and also help them express themselves to the other child. I also give them sometimes a little bit more grace with their feelings and let them kind of be themselves more. So, Julie, do you want to piggyback on that?
Yeah. Neurodivergence includes things like attention and focus issues. And I found that to break things down, and like we were saying before, keeping the steps or the segments really short. Also, if their hands aren't busy with snack eating or project doing, having a toy or a fidget item in their hands can be really helpful to engage. And no, we're not talking about specific kids, but it is really helpful to talk with Eva ahead of time if you can. Find out a little bit about the specific kids, what motivates them, what are their interests, what rewards them. Are there certain triggers for them for negative responses? Is there something comforting to them or centering? We have to be aware of the level of stimulation in the room, which can be really loud, especially with a multi-age group. And sometimes noise can be a trigger for kids. Sometimes the movement around them can be a trigger. They might be okay for a good long time, and then all of a sudden they've hit their limit. So I've seen that happen. It doesn't mean we can control it all the time. It just means that there's an awareness there. I've taught at least 3 different kids who needed their own space to feel comfortable and be successful in the room. So what that meant for one of them was that they had a separate table near the main table, And they were doing the same activity, but they were able to have their own space. And that was really important for that kid. Another child sat in a beanbag in the corner and listened from there and read books while we were talking or doing. It was amazing how much he picked up from the conversation, and we were still relating from across the room, but he needed to be engaged in another activity while things were going on. The third kid, I wouldn't suggest exactly this because of safety issues, but we had a blanket over the table, and he would go under the table, and it was like a little comforting cave for him. And again, he's participating in the conversation, in the activity, just in a different place where it felt good to him. So just creating that space for kids in the room becomes important sometimes. That's all I've got.
That's great. I wanted to say too, with Trina's idea, that I will be coming up with a little cheat sheet or paper or whatever to share with folks about the children that we have that have some IEP, or maybe their parents want us to know a message about them, some neurodivergency or whatever. Let's see, managing name calling, bullying, and teasing.
Is it okay if I just mention one quick thing?
Sure.
As a parent of a kid, of kids with neurodivergence. You're
supposed to eat downstairs.
So, hey guys, can you please go into the other room? So, the one thing I wanted to also just stress is the importance of relationship with neurodivergent kids and kids in general, right? And adults too, right? I apologize. Uriah, please stop. Thank you. And so, right, that I think it's really important to know. So Eva, you mentioned this, but you know, it's okay that adults defer to you and Jill or the people that are there more consistently with these neurodivergent kids, because I can tell you right. Hey, Uriah. Okay, I apologize. I'll just have to try later.
Okay, well, we can definitely come back to you, Trina, because I think that's important to talk about relationship. So I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to talk, but I'll, yeah, we'll get back to it. Managing name calling, bullying, and teasing. So I wrote up another form for this in case you want to have a look, but I'll just review some of my notes with you right now. Why do people call each other names is a good question, because other children are called a name is one reason, because they feel insecure, because they feel mad or upset with another child, and because they feel jealous of another child or children. What can I do to stop name calling? It's best not to try and shut it down by saying, stop, no, don't. But if you have to, you have to. Just assert your own boundary. Another way of dealing with it is by asking the child, I'm wondering why you're calling him a name, or so-and-so a name. Or to be even more specific, why did you call him stupid? Or whatever the name is. And also you could say, I see you need something right now. What is it? Or you could say something like, did that bring up a feeling for you? And they usually will say, the children will say, I called her a name because she called me a name. Or I called her a name because she did something that made me mad. Or I called her a name because she did this to me. So try to get at the root of the problem and focus on the emotions. Avoid asking kids to apologize for other ones. I think it covers up the problem sometimes, not always, but sometimes. Instead, focus on creating empathy. We want to get the children to talk about their hurt and their feelings. So when a child feels upset, they feel a combination of anger with a need for justice and compassion with a need for resolution. So keep that in mind, that it's the child that has has started the problem or is part of the problem has that need for both justice and compassion. Your response can be, do you see that she's upset? Or you could say, let's see what might make you both feel better. I also want to say that reflective listening is really effective, and I'm a big proponent of that. And what that means is when a child says, I feel angry right now, you say to them, you feel angry right now. You say exactly what they've said back to them, only with a very empathetic tone. Or he might say, or she might say, I want to punch something. And you say, you want to punch something, here's a pillow, or something like that. What do I do if children get into an argument? So another thing you could do when children get into an argument, because they often help each other, they often resolve it on their own with a little bit of assistance. So you can sportscast, and what this looks like is, for instance, Sophie says to Maggie, I'm angry because you took my Play-Doh. And the facilitator can say, Sophie is angry because Maggie took her Play-Doh. And Maggie says, I didn't take her Play-Doh. And facilitator says, Maggie says she didn't take Sophie's Play-Doh. And then Sophie says, but why is my Play-Doh missing then? And Maggie says, I don't know. And then the facilitator says, maybe we need to figure out somewhere where your Play-Doh went. And now both girls can work together to solve the problem. So notice how the facilitator used reflective listening to help the girls hear each other. What if someone is physically hurt or hit? It's important to let the DRE know that this incident has occurred right away. And Northwest UU has to get the parents out of the service in this case. And also we have to have a incident report. So the incident report is signed by the parents, and ideally we do a little mediation with both families prior to leaving the building, but that's not always easy to do. And we need to discuss more about how that would look as well in our committee meeting. Just a short word about teasing. Teasing comes from feeling insecure about something. It is often between siblings. And teasing often is repetitive name calling, but not always. It can approach with one of the following questions. Again, I'm wondering why you're teasing her right now, or this person's right now. Why did you call her baby face? You know, you can use the term, why did you call her baby face? She doesn't seem to like that. Look at her face. And then I had a word about bullying. Bullying is like teasing, but happens time after time. It's sometimes repetitive pressure to do something a child doesn't want to do, or getting their name called repeatedly. The child who's getting bullied has often been on the receiving end of a similar behavior, and which is causing them to lash out. It is mean-spirited, and bullying can be physical abuse as well, like pushing or hitting somebody. So bullying is serious, but we don't often see it in RE because it's just an hour, and the kids don't tend to do that kind of thing with each other. It's rare, but sometimes it's an issue, and you do need to contact the DRE or the staff person that's there and let them know. And then also the child could be maybe pulled out of the classroom at that time, and a parent would have to be involved. So it just depends on how serious it is. But if you run it by the DRE or staff, you can get a sense of what needs to be done. So those are my notes on that. Thank you for bearing with me. Trina, is this a better time to talk about what you were going to say about neurodivergency?
We can attempt, but we're definitely having a neurodivergent moment or moments in our house. Okay. So this is Brooklyn. but yeah, it was just, and I actually think it very much applies to, bullying and teasing and other things too, right? Which is really it, particularly with neurodivergent kids, but with anyone, it really just boils down to relationship, right? So if you feel like you don't know that kid very well, and it seems like something's just a little bit off, or right, like they're not responding in the way you would kind of anticipate, or you think I would say neurodivergent kids tend to have very big responses to things that may seem very small, or you would expect smaller reactions than what you're getting. The first step is really going to be to develop a relationship. And so if you feel like in that moment they're doing something that's unsafe, obviously stop the unsafe behavior. But otherwise, it's probably not going to get you very far to try to correct them, right? Or to try to get them to do whatever, because without that relationship, you're not going to be successful. And it will probably actually make it worse. So honestly, either make the decision to walk away or right, try to engage in some sort of relationship building, which, as some people have suggested, right, might not necessarily be talking, but could be, oh, hey, can we do 10 jumping jacks together? Right? Or I'm gonna race you to, this end of the room to the other end of the room, right? Can you go faster than me? Right? Or who can walk backwards while saying the ABCs, right? So just different ways of both engaging senses, but also doing something that's together and connected. Sometimes will then allow you to start to develop that relationship. And so if there is an instance of where these neurodivergent kids are also feeling anxious or worried, they are likely to be the ones that then start bullying and teasing other kids, right? That's a common response to hide their, oh, you're biting my hair. At least for my child, I'll just say that a lot of times the bullying and teasing is a way to actually hide other sorts of big feelings that they're having. So again, by having a relationship, you can sometimes be able to manage, behaviors such as bullying and teasing.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you. So our next topic, unless anybody else has anything else to add, does anybody have anything to add? No. Our next topic is how to work with other teachers. And Madeline was going to introduce us to this topic.
Sure. So working with other teachers is wonderful and can really help to sort of spread the responsibility and the planning for activities. And I would say for working with other teachers, especially when you have a big group of kids that you're working with, it's important to touch base either beforehand if you can, or at the first thing when you get to the room, is kind of what your plan is for that day and to establish what your activities are. So you're both kind of on the same page. And then it might be helpful to sort of divide and conquer in terms of who's going to do what. So maybe one person is going to do a read aloud and engage the kids in conversation, and then the other person is going to manage the snacks, or however you decide to divide the responsibilities. But it can be, I think it's helpful to have a plan with the teacher that you're working with so that you're both kind of on the same page. And that, I would say, would go with the sort of established routines and expectations too, so that you're both on the same page with what you're sort of expecting in terms of if you want the kids to raise their hands if they want to share, that's something you might want to be on, talk with the person about beforehand, so that you kind of you're on the same page. So you're both asking, or how many ever people are there, the adults are all sort of asking the same things of the kids. That's kind of all I had for working with other teachers, but.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I have anything to add right now. Does anybody else have anything to add to that?
My only helpful thing I've learned is that just like having a relationship with the kids, building a relationship with your teacher really helps with splitting up the work and deciding who's doing what and just knowing where they're coming from.
Yeah, for sure. So we're almost finished. The last thing that we have on the agenda was to have Trina talk about cultural competence and bias. I know you have a form for the volunteers to fill out, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that and other things that you want to say, Trina.
Yeah. So I start with just saying that, one of the things that I've noticed as being a parent of BIPOC kids, and so BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, and as a white person, one of the things that I think would be pretty obvious to most people is that our religious education program is actually far more diverse. I would actually suspect both with gender identity, sexuality, race, right? A whole slew of things. Our kids actually seem to be more diverse than the adult population. So frankly, this is a reality check, right? For adults perhaps that are coming in, because we have a lot of kids who have a lot of amazing things to offer, but may not always be coming from experiences that you're familiar with or that, you've had experience with. Because I don't even know, what is this generation called other than crazy? No. But they know a lot more about everything more than we knew at their age, right? Chalk that up to YouTube and Roblox and whatever else you want to chalk it up to. And so I would just say that one of the things that I think is really important is to look at just kind of where do you fit. Thank you. Thank you. I don't need to know about that right now. So, where do you fit on what we're calling the anti-bias assessment, right? So we'll be sending that around. Oh, the sharing is disabled, but so we'll be sending around just a self-assessment that you can do on your own bias, right? Because the reality is we all have bias.
Oh yeah, right? I didn't share.
Or does it work now? It does not. Okay. But what's great is that we'll make sure to share this around, and we encourage you to just, it's, wherever you fit on these spectrums, the important thing to keep in mind is that we do hold bias, right? And that's okay, right? But frankly, we just got to figure out how to keep it in check as much as possible, right? And so just wanted to, so kind of this reality check that you are more than likely to be quite different than the kids you're working with, right? So the things that you understand to be true may not be what the youth that you're working with would agree with, right? Or would think to be true. So just kind of keep that in mind, right? That the experience perhaps will be very different. And I just wanted to also mention that we do have I suspect we'll get more of these again, but transracial families is what so there's some terminology I just wanted to share. So a transracial family would be where the caregivers are a different race than the kids. And so again, what that just means is we've got a lot of kids that are very used to things like code switching. Right. So code switching is where we've got a lot of kids that are able to, and youth, I should be saying youth and not kids, but that are able to operate right in several different environments and are actually far better equipped than we are often as adults to jump between different environments. So don't be surprised if you hear youth talking in one way, right, with their peers, and then in another way with you as an adult. Or that at times you may need to remind them, hey, you're talking to an adult right now, right? Let's think about the way in which we're having a conversation with an adult. So those are the main things that I just wanted to offer, but not sure if anyone else has other suggestions as well.
Just asking questions is great. And sometimes I forget that I'm allowed to ask the questions I need to ask to really get to know where someone's coming from. And my kid reminds me of that. like, like, Mom, why didn't you just ask? Oh, right. I can just ask questions about gender identity. I can ask questions about a cultural experience that is not the same as mine. I have to be sensitive the way I ask those things, but I can ask questions.
Mhm.
And I think too, going back to the bias survey that you're talking about, Trina, I've done that for work. And what was really powerful about it was it not only sort of reveals your own bias, but it helps you as you're thinking about how to interact with kids. And it's a great tool. And but one thing that I think can be difficult for people is that sort of feeling like, oh, I'm a terrible person, or sort of defensive about the results. And I think um, going into it kind of with an open heart and an open mind is really important when you're doing the bias survey, because like Trina said, we all have bias, and it's important to sort of address that. And it's a really good way, powerful way to reveal those things that a lot of us probably don't even realize that we're doing or saying. So.
Thanks, Madeline. That's very helpful review of the survey.
And I did want to, I'm just realizing too, just like Julie, you mentioned asking questions, but I think don't be surprised if the youth ask you questions, right? In the same way, right? And also don't overthink the answers, right? It's okay to just, maybe you don't know how to respond and just say, actually, let me think about that and let me get back to you, right? But trying to just recognize the different ages that you might be talking with. And probably by the time you've said 1 to 2 sentences, they're done with that question. So it's okay to not have, whether it's about a religious tradition or whatever it is, right? It's okay to just kind of be direct. But that it's possible because these differences, right, and similarities will come up, right, in the course of the conversations.
Well, thank you guys for doing this. I think our listeners will enjoy this and get a lot out of this little 1-hour program that we've made for them. Does anybody have any closing thoughts?
Thank
go
you.
Now. Yeah,
for helping, for taking care of our kids.
And thank you for organizing this. It's been great to hear too the perspectives of everyone in the group, and thanks for putting it together, Eva.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm going to stop the recording now.